What is up, guys? PK here. Now, Chaos Wastes. Great update, great DLC, with a great game mode, at a great price. But, I'ma just go ahead and say something extremely controversial. It's not perfect. And in today's video, we're gonna be talking about what I think should be done, what stuff should be fixed, what stuff should be changed, what things should ThePartyKnife implement, and which things should they remove. Now, I just want to make one thing very, very clear. Everything in today's video, from here on, moving forward, belongs to a very specific sphere of conversation, known as opinions. And you know the first thing about opinions is they're kind of like assholes. Everyone has one and no one gives a shit, especially about yours.
Surprise, motherfucker.
That is, unless you have a YouTube channel, in which case suddenly, for whatever reason, everyone suddenly seems to care about yours. Now, I may not be an expert, despite the fact that I am on a monitor, but nonetheless, maybe I am. And to prove that I am indeed qualified and an expert, what I have here, guys, is my chocolate, but this is an actual certificate from the year 2002, at which point I would have been 9 years old. 8 years old, actually, sorry. Which point I would have been 8 years old, in which I indeed received a black belt in Taekwondo. Now, this is an actual certificate, and as you can clearly see here, I indeed have a black belt. Now, sure, you might be thinking, but this isn't a Taekwondo belt. But PK, that is a belt for a normal pair of jeans. And yeah, sure, you'd be right in that. But the certificate is in fact real, and I did in fact receive a black belt. That is, if you had a 𝒮𝔄𝔢𝔯𝔮𝔲𝔞𝔄𝔄𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔲𝔞, which is essentially total color blindness. Actually, now that I think about it, I guess it would have been more like grayish if you had total color blindness, but that's not important. Maybe it was only yellow, and maybe I quit a month later. But regardless, I have totally prepared for this video. Okay, enough fucking around. No, for real, today we're going to talk about 10 aspects of the Chaos Wastes update that I feel like needs significant changes. So you could call it the top 10 biggest things that need fixing or changing. Wow, what a creative title. Anyways, in no particular order. So let's start out. First of all, number uno. That's a 1, for those of you who don't know. Now, as some of you might know, whenever you lose a match in Chaos Wastes, you get to keep 1/4 of your coins, capped at 200. That is assuming you're the host, right? Because here's the thing. That's how it was supposed to work, but it was broken, and then ThePartyKnife fixed it. But the fix then unintentionally caused a lot of people to crash the game, so they drew back the fix, and so now it's back to square one, where essentially it only functions for the host, which means only the host actually gets to keep the coins that him or her had in the previous lost match. Now, here's what I think they should do, quite simply. I think it's pretty straightforward. There are 3 options. Either just set everyone to start with 0 coins, set everyone to start with 100 coins, or set everyone, which I think is the best solution, with 200 coins. That way you feel like you're starting with something, you get to actually roll on the first boon. Like sometimes you'll have 2 boons right in the beginning, right after each other, and you just essentially, in a lot of cases, you just walk past both of them. And it just feels, I don't know, it feels like lost. It feels like you're missing out on something that you never had a chance to not miss out on. So I feel like everyone should just start with 200 coins. Pretty straightforward. It gives you, again, it allows you to roll early on and be like, oh, get the chance to actually get something good right in the beginning. And it doesn't create that sort of arbitrary difference between the different players, where someone starts with more than the others. Also, I don't like the whole mechanic, simply because that means, let's say I had a really long game, I start with like 180 coins, and we immediately lose the game, right? So I didn't get a lot of coins, so now my next game after a loss is at a worse starting point than my previous one. that just feels wrong to me. So I just feel they should drop that whole keep coins mechanic and just set sort of a fixed starting point. Moving on, number 2. I feel like weapon traits should be directly purchasable in shrines. Because they added all these great weapon traits, like the orange weapon traits, equivalent to adventure mode swift slaying, but there's a bunch of new ones, right? And a lot of them are really, really nice. I like the mechanics, but it feels so arbitrary because unlike all the boons, you have no control here, like zero, nada. It's not like you're offered 3 different, options and get to pick one at any point. So I feel like at the very least you should be able to re-roll the trait in a shrine for something like maybe 40 coins, and you get to re-roll that trait once. Something along those lines, you know what I mean? I'm not saying that you should just be able to necessarily purchase a specific one, because that might be too OP, but I feel like you should be able to re-roll it for a cost of something like 40 coins. Yeah, I feel like that would be fair. Because at the moment, I don't know, I feel really arbitrary about all of them. I never really notice which one I get, and when I do, I don't really think about it. So I don't like the current implementation of that property in particular. I even think it would be fair enough if you could also re-roll the properties on the weapon without having to actually change weapon. But again, at a cost, of course, without any guarantees. Like the rest of the Chaos Waste, I feel like that would fit fairly well into the sort of grand scheme of things. Number 3, weapon cosmetics. That needs a fix and a change. Like the way it works currently makes no sense to me. Maybe just be me, again, opinion here, but like all those gorgeous weapon skins just go to waste. Like you only get to see them at most for like the 2 final maps in most cases, right? At most, if even that much, right? Because a lot of times you don't get to upgrade one of your weapons until literally at the Citadel on the final map, right? And they've implemented all these new skins, not to mention things like the weave skins, and we just don't get to use them. And it's actually worse than that, because not only that, but you also, all the skins that you've actually grinded, spend a bunch of time actually obtaining, you don't get to use those either. So you're always starting from a position of an ugly skin, and then having to sort of arbitrarily upgrade it as you play through the Chaos Wastes. And the problem with this whole thing, in my opinion, is you spend an hour to obtain the skin, and then you get 15 minutes to use it. And I don't know, I don't like the way that's implemented. In my opinion, I think there's, again, a really easy and simple way to solve it, because there's already a mod that can do this. Let's just say instead that you get to start with the equivalent of the best looking skin, right? The one that has the white weapon glow, the one you would get once you actually upgrade to a red weapon at the end of the Chaos Wastes. So you start with that, because it has a white glow, because it's the white weapon quality. You upgrade it to a green, you get the green glow instead. Same skin, green glow. Upgrade it to a blue, same skin, blue glow. Upgrade it to a, I mean, that's just one solution, right? I'm not saying it's the right one, but it's just one suggestion. Because I feel like right now, it just, I don't know, it feels like they make these amazing skins, and then we don't even get a chance to really use them. I felt the same way about the weave skins, but at least with the weave skins, you had them sort of permanently in the weaves, even though it was sad you couldn't bring them to adventure mode. Anyways, I just feel like that's sad. Like, one other solution could be to simply allow people to upgrade sort of their weapon to any quality throughout the whole Chaos Waste. Right now you're limited in the start, but I don't. Maybe if you increase the prices a bit, I don't feel like it would necessarily be OP to allow players to upgrade all the way to red in the first map, assuming you made enough to do so, right? But I think that would require that they increase the prices slightly in order to balance it out. But I feel like that would be a better solution still. Or perhaps even a whole different option, like a different approach could be that everyone, instead of sort of rolling for a random weapon, like you can in some shrines, altars, sorry, then just have people start with random weapon types and instead buy in to a specific weapon. Like, I think that would be a better approach as well. One potential option at least. Because just at the moment, I don't know. I don't like what they're doing with in terms of the skins. I like the skins, it's just we don't get to use them, right? So I feel like it's a waste. And that might seem like a drastic or radical change to someone for something that's already sort of working, but I don't know, it just feels unpolished to me, and I feel like there's a better solution in terms of the skins. Number 4, people should be able to see all of their boons when they click I no matter how many they purchased. I feel like it's to me absolutely unacceptable that you can't see all of your boons. How did it not occur to you that that it's possible to purchase more than there are room for in the UI? I feel like that needs to change, and it needs to change as soon as possible. Which brings us to number 5, which is that you should be able to see all the boons you currently have when you're purchasing new boons in a shrine, right? It's like the one time you actually need to know specifically what you have is the one time you're unable to actually check what you have. Right? Because when you're in game, often, I think a lot of players feel this way. Again, these are just what I sort of take from other people and what I feel myself. And although it's not a problem I have myself due to the amount of hours I've put into all the boons, so I know exactly which boon is what. So you know, it doesn't take me a long time to sort of digest, okay, I got that thing, right? But I think for a lot of people, they'll, you know, stand still and hold I, and they'll have to right click and then move the mouse over and check, what did I get? And quite often there just isn't time for that, right? You move through it so fast, and the one time where you actually have a moment to breathe and you actually need to know, what do I have? What synergies are possible here? The moment where you actually get to think, oh, how can I influence this build? That's the one moment where you're like, oh, didn't memorize them all? Too bad. Too bad. Like, that just seems blatantly unfair for, and sort of noob unfriendly, right? Like, that's not friendly to newer players, is what I'm trying to say. And I really feel like that needs to change, because that's a great time to be able to actually look at your boons and go, oh, I got this, and I could do that, and you know, yeah. So I really feel like you have to be able to see what you already have when you're in a shrine. Number 6. I feel like you should completely remove, like they should completely remove Hand of 𝒮𝔲𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔲𝔞𝔄𝔄𝔄𝔄𝔄 Homebrewer, Healer's Touch, and Grenadier. Those 4 boons, like every time someone gets one of those 4 boons, they're infuriated. That's because the problem is they bring nothing to the table. Like, not only are they boring, but you actually feel it. Of course, all rare boons can't be equally strong. But these 4 boons in particular, I feel there's no scenario with any class in which I would want any of them. And so they feel more like a punishment. And I'd rather just have a boon that was a literal punishment, so that at least I knew where I was standing, right? I was like, oh shit, I rolled that 1 in 10 where you get screwed over, right? Like, I prefer that. I don't know, because this buff, this boon feels so arbitrary that it's like, I don't know, I get annoyed every time I get it. I'm not gonna lie, I get annoyed every time. I'm like, oh, really? Again, this one? Right? And I honestly don't feel like it would be that difficult to implement some sort of, just some weaker, simpler, yet useful properties, like similarly to some of the really OP unique Berserker ones, where you know, get a bunch of effects related to cleave, push, sort of power, all these things, but like in a really scaled down version, right? So 5% power for cleaving through 5 minions. I know, you're like, really 5%? But I'd rather have that. Like, I'd much rather have that. 5% attack speed. I'd much rather have that, right? Small things, but at least small useful things, so you still feel like you're building something up, instead of just this, that was a waste of 200 coins, right? That's the problem. The problem is you spent the 200 coins, and you're like, really? Oh, I wish I had never bought another random boon again, right? That's the feeling you're left with, and I feel like that's unnecessary. I'd rather just have 1% attack speed. Like, it doesn't matter how bad it is, as long as it's good. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how tiny a fraction. Just, I want something where I'm like, oh, at least I feel like there's some effect here that's positive, right? So, because I get that from a lot of players. I feel like a lot of people get frustrated when they get one of those in particular, so I would just remove them altogether, because really no one has ever, like, no one uses them even in adventure mode, okay? So, like, just get rid of them. And number 7, I feel like you should add the list of boons that you can see in your inventory. I feel like there should be sort of a miniature list at the reward screen, you know, because a lot of people like to take screenshots of the sort of the end screen to, you know, where they can see all of the different metrics for how much damage did I deal, you know, this and that. People like to do that. That's a way to feel like, oh, guys, see what I did here, right? And I feel like it would be so nice for people. Again, it's not something I do, but it's something I see happen a lot on my server, which is one of the reasons I think it would be a great implementation to have, like, just a list of boons next to each player, so everyone could see what everyone else ended up with. And oh god damn it, Pyro, you got so lucky, man. God damn it, I hate you, Gutsy. That's one of my mods. No. Where you could be like, oh, damn, no wonder you were wrecking shit, right? Because you had that shit, right? And like, oh, no wonder that guy sucked, because, I mean, he didn't get anything other than just a bunch of rares, right? He's just a rare fest all along. But I feel like it would just add so much more to sort of that feeling at the end of, oh, what actually happened throughout the game, who was lucky, who was unlucky, and that looking back and going like, oh, look, man, this is the sickest build I've ever had, and then you no longer just have to explain it, you just have this screenshot that just says it all. Number 8, I feel like you need to make sure that ultimate boons, that is unique boons related to your level 30 talent, they either have to stack, that is to say they have to functionally work with one another, or you need to implement a system in which the ones that you feel like either can't function together because they're like incompatible, let's just say the double slash and the sideward slash from 𝒮𝔞𝔤𝔢𝔯𝒮𝔮𝔲𝔞 would be one example. If you go like, unless you want it to be like a sideward slash and then the secondary slash, I guess you could get that to work, but you get what I'm saying. In cases where you feel like they're not compatible, then they should never show up together. Like, then there should never be a scenario in which you purchase a 300 coin boon in a shrine only to find out that, oh, one of the effects aren't working, right? Because that's just so demotivating. So either get them to work together, either get them to function at the same time, or make sure that for that class they just don't appear whenever you have whatever specific ultimate talent, right? Because that's just so frustrating, right? And number 9, I've heard this from so many people, you gotta fix the spawn locations for players on certain maps. There are like certain maps where all of a sudden one player will just spawn like ridiculously far away. Like, not on all maps, but there's just a couple of specific areas where it's like, holy shit, where did he go, right? It's literally like half the map away that this person spawns. And you're like, Jesus Christ, I have to sit here for like minutes, right? I've heard a lot of people complain about that. Also, sometimes it will bug out, so you spawn on the wrong side of things, where it's like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. You know, where you miss out on something for absolutely no reason. It's usually in the beginning. Like, I've had it happen so many times where someone dies at the very beginning, and they'll spawn super close. And then someone dies right around the spawn location of that other player, and they're like half the map away. And again, that's just frustrating. The difference in punishment for the same mistake, essentially, among the two players, to me, is just too vast. One more thing, little detail here, let's call it 9.5. There are a lot of places where you can fall straight into lava. Which, not gonna lie, is kind of funny, like this one screw up I did. Where, funny enough, the witch followed me right after, and it was kind of hilarious. Not gonna lie, it's kind of funny. I think this is more of a minor detail, because actually, if you ask me, I've always had the opinion that on Cataclysm difficulty, this is how any ledge should work, in my opinion. I don't feel like there should be a grab mechanic on Cataclysm, but that's just me. I know that's probably a controversial opinion and not something I understand that not everyone would agree with. But that's how I always felt like every ledge should work. I always felt like the pickup mechanic was annoying. It's like, I've always, like, if I want to jump off this goddamn cliff, then I want to jump off this goddamn cliff, okay? And then I don't want some annoying mechanic on the highest difficulty of the game to stop me from suiciding, right? Like, if I want to jump off a cliff, then I want to jump off a cliff. Otherwise, I can go play Legend like the other scrubs, okay? But on Cataclysm difficulty, I should be able to drop off a cliff. But that's a sidetrack. In the normal circumstances of the game, that is something that should be fixed as well. Although that is one of the minor things. Number 10. And probably, in my opinion, the biggest one. Fix the goddamn minion spawn locations. Like, oh my god. This is probably the most frustrating of them all, in my opinion. And the one that sort of, at least to me, has annoyed me the most. I think ThePartyKnife has done a great job building the maps. They're beautiful, they're amazingly made, and don't get me wrong, all of this negativity that I've said in this video is like a drop sort of in a bucket of positivity, right? But with that said, you can definitely feel that these maps are not any, like, they're slightly rushed in the sense that there are arbitrary invisible walls, for example, at drop downs. Sometimes you can actually walk to a ledge, and you cannot, like, without dropping down, right? So it's one of these map points of no return, and without actually dropping down, you're suddenly on the wrong side of an invisible wall, and you're unable to move back, even though you haven't dropped down from the ledge yet. Yet there's some arbitrary invisible wall that prevents you from going back. This has happened to me so many times, and it makes the map feel fake somehow. It makes it feel, I don't know, it's hard to sort of get into when there are too many of these invisible walls. And I don't say this because I want people to glitch out or cheat. I swear to God, it's just when the fixing of a problem is worse than the problem, then you're doing it wrong, in my opinion. And I feel like some of these models, probably as an attempt, I could imagine, it's either because it's rushed or it's an attempt to prevent people from glitching out. But it's like, why would I go backwards in the map? Like, I don't get it. Maybe there's probably a reason that I don't know, because I am not a game developer, so I'm not trying to give them too hard of a time. But minion spawns are the worst. Okay, like that is something that simply has to be fixed, and it has to be fixed now. Because sure, in adventure mode, you do get the oddball of there are certain, you know, when they implement fixes, sometimes there'll be a spot like the first drop down on Warhammer, where you'll get a patrol suddenly spawning in front of you, right? But in general, spawn locations are really good on the normal maps because they've been tweaked to perfection, right? I'm not saying they're perfect. That's actually just what I said, but that's not what I meant. I'm not saying they're. I didn't mean that they're perfect, but they're really good, right? So like when you get ambushed, you know where the minions are coming from. When minions drop down behind you and suddenly you get hit in the back, you realize, oh, it's because there was actually a hole in the ceiling that it could jump down from, and I actually just wasn't paying enough attention. Whereas in the Chaos Waste, you're like, that thing spawned behind me. Or maybe it didn't spawn behind me. Maybe it spawned inside the wall and then it jumped out the wall and hit me in the back. I've seen that happen as well. It's the frequency by which this happens that I feel like is unacceptable. Because like so many times where in a normal adventure map you learn how to build a sort of a bird's eye perspective of what's going on as you're moving through the map, right? So you're aware of, okay, there were no minions on that ledge, like my back should be clear right now, and then suddenly there's just something behind you where you're like, what? Where like this would never happen, at least not anywhere near as often had I been playing adventure mode. And it's because of the spawn locations. I think it's the stronghold map or something, where like there's this area where let's just say you get a horde, and like I just remember thinking so clearly, my back is clear because I just looked up there. I turn around, and a moment later, like literally half a horde has spawned on top of the ledge, where they should, in a position they should never spawn. Like they should spawn at the very least 10 meters further back, so that there's a running time between you, so you have reaction time. So it's not like, oh, they just appeared out of thin air, right? Because I feel like that happens way too much in the Chaos Waste. Way too much. And that is probably the single most important and most annoying thing in my opinion. It's that it feels like things are jumping out of walls, they're appearing out of nowhere behind you, and it just completely nullifies this game sense you have. This game sense, yeah, because that's actually the worst part. Sometimes having a worse game sense in Chaos Wastes is better. And that may seem completely counterintuitive, but if I had no game sense, right, then I might have been blocking in a lot of those scenarios, just out of fear, out of, you know, I don't know what's happening, so I better just block, right? Whereas in a lot of these cases, I had established there's nothing there, and I'm aware of that, and now I put my attention elsewhere, and then suddenly I get punished for it because something spawns out of nowhere in an illogical location. And that can infuriate me, right? Where it's like, no, I had specifically made aware there was nothing there, it's a closed off location, or it's nothing should be able to appear there in that amount of time, unless it appears out of thin air, right? So that's essentially the 10 things, or however many it was, that I feel like Tryhard need to fix, implement, change somehow. Let me know down in the comments below which changes you guys want implemented the most. That is, other than just adding new boons, right? Because of course we also want new content, but these are sort of more elementary fixes that I feel like needs to be done as soon as possible. But again, these are just my opinions. This is not a gospel, this is not law. I'm not a Fat Shark employee, I'm not a game developer. So take everything I said in this video with a grain of salt. All in all, I think Chaos Waste has been the best DLC they've ever released for a lot of reasons. So so again, got nothing but love for the Chaos Wastes, with the exception of these 10 things. Anyways, let me know down in the comments below which fixes or which additions you guys think they should focus on next. And yeah, as always, I love you guys. Stay awesome. Peace out.